You've seen war movies. You think you know what courage looks like. Let me show you what they show you. The hero squares his shoulders, sets his jaw, walks into danger like he's taking a stroll through the park on a Sunday afternoon. Not a tremble in his hands, not a doubt in his eyes. He looks at death, and death blinks first. Bullets whip past him, close enough to part his hair, and he doesn't flinch. He makes a decision in the time it takes to draw breath, and that decision saves the day. His voice never wavers. His hands stay steady on the rifle. He is everything you imagine courage should be. That's a fine story. It's also a lie. Here's what actually happens. France, 1944. A frozen foxhole before dawn. A man huddles in the dark, and his whole body is shaking. Not from the cold, though God knows it's cold enough to crack your bones. He's shaking because in 20 minutes he's going up and over that rim, and German machine guns are waiting, and he knows, not fears knows, that some of the men beside him won't see noon. Maybe he won't either. His teeth chatter so hard he bites his own tongue, tastes blood. His hands won't hold still enough to check his rifle, so he stops trying. His guts have turned to water, and he's not sure he won't soil himself before the whistle blows. The man next to him is shaking just as hard. Neither one looks at the other. There's nothing to say. That man is not a coward. That man is every soldier who ever lived. Now here's the thing nobody wants to admit. The fearless hero didn't just appear out of nowhere. He was manufactured. Every element of him is designed. The square jaw? That's a casting decision. The steady hands? That's camera angles and multiple takes. The calm walk into danger? That's a script written by someone who's never felt their guts turn to ice. Hollywood didn't invent the myth of the fearless warrior. That story's as old as war itself. We've been telling it since Homer. But Hollywood perfected it. They gave it a face. Usually handsome, always calm. They made it so real that audiences walk out of theaters thinking that's what courage actually looks like. It isn't, not even close. See, the problem is that this myth serves too many people for it to die naturally. Think about it. Young men need something to aspire to, something to aim for when they're scared and confused and don't know if they've got what it takes. The fearless hero gives them a target. Never mind that the target is fiction. Never mind that aiming for fearlessness is like aiming for flight by flapping your arms. Mothers need it too. They need to believe their sons aren't terrified. It's hard enough to send your boy off to war. Believing he'll face it with calm courage makes it bearable. Believing he's shaking in a frozen hole, too scared to even pray, that's harder to carry. And the generals? The generals need troops who think courage is something you either have or you don't. Because if soldiers understood that bravery is a choice, that the difference between the man who advances and the man who runs is a decision made in a split second, made while terrified, made without any guarantee, well, they might make a different choice. They might choose to live. So the myth persists, and nobody asks what it costs. Let me tell you what it costs. When we pretend that bravery means fearlessness, we do two kinds of damage, and both of them are real, and both of them hurt real people. First, we dishonor the actual courage of men who were terrified and did their duty anyway. We take their achievement, the hardest thing a human being can do, which is to move forward when every instinct screams at you to run, and we pretend it was easy. We pretend they didn't struggle. We erase the very thing that makes what they did remarkable. Think about it. A man who doesn't feel fear and charges a machine gun, what has he actually done? He's just reckless. He's broken in some way that makes him unable to recognize danger. There's no victory there. There's no triumph over anything. But a man shaking so hard he can barely stand, who charges that machine gun anyway because his friends need him to, that man has done something genuinely extraordinary. He's felt everything you would feel, the terror, the certainty of death, the overwhelming desire to be anywhere else, and he's moved forward anyway. That's courage. That's the real thing. And the myth erases it. The second kind of damage is worse. When we pretend that brave men don't feel fear, we abandon the ones who come home still carrying it. If courage means fearlessness, then the veteran who can't sleep, who flinches at loud noises, who wakes up screaming 30 years after his war, he must not have been brave. He must be broken, weak, less than the hero we imagined. That's not just wrong, that's betrayal. The myth lets us celebrate a fiction while the real men, the scared men who did it anyway, stand there invisible inside our celebration. We applaud a version of them that never existed. And the real man, the one who actually earned the right to be honored, watches us praise a stranger. You want to know what the biggest misconception about bravery is? It's not a small misunderstanding. It's not a detail we get wrong. It's the whole picture. Everything you think you know about courage, the steady hero, the calm in the face of death, the fearless warrior, all of it is wrong. The truth is harder. The truth makes people uncomfortable. But the truth is what soldiers actually lived, and it's the only thing worth telling. So forget the movies. Forget the stories you've been told. What you think you know about bravery, you don't know. Not even close. And that's where we start. Here's what nobody wants to hear. The lie we tell about courage, the fearless hero standing tall while danger breaks around him. It isn't harmless. It's a lie with teeth. It does damage. It hurts the very men it claims to honor. I'm going to show you how. Picture a parade, flags waving, crowds cheering. A veteran walks down the street, and everyone around him is celebrating. He's got medals on his chest. People are clapping, shouting, thanking him. All those faces, all that gratitude. And inside, he feels nothing but distance. They're celebrating a version of him that doesn't exist. The fearless hero who stared down death with calm eyes, that's who they think they're applauding. The man who never shook before an assault, who never bit his tongue to keep from crying out, who never wanted to run so badly his legs ached with it. That man never existed. He's a story. He's a comfortable fiction that lets civilians feel good about what they asked soldiers to do. The real man, the scared man who did it anyway, stands there in the middle of all that celebration, and nobody sees him. They're applauding a stranger. And he can't tell them the truth because the truth would ruin the party. The truth would make them uncomfortable. The truth might make them think he's not the hero they wanted him to be. So he smiles. He waves. He accepts praise for something he didn't experience. And when he goes home, he carries two burdens. The weight of what he actually did and the loneliness of being invisible inside his own celebration. That's the price of the myth. And that's just the beginning. Let me tell you about the dishonor paradox. The myth claims to honor courage. That's its whole purpose. To celebrate the brave, to hold up an example, to show what valor looks like. But here's the thing. By pretending courage means fearlessness, the myth actually diminishes what soldiers accomplished. Think about it this way. A man without fear who charges a machine gun nest, what exactly has he done? He didn't overcome anything. He didn't triumph over his own terror. He just did a thing without feeling the thing that makes the doing hard. That's not courage. That's just malfunction. A broken sense of self-preservation isn't bravery. It's damage. But a man shaking so hard he can barely hold his rifle, who charges that machine gun nest anyway? Because 12 yards to his left, his squad is pinned down and they need covering fire. That man has done something the fearless man could never do. He's felt everything. The certainty of death, the screaming urge to run, the cold hand gripping his guts, and he's moved forward anyway. He's made a choice that the fearless man was never asked to make. The myth erases that. It takes the hardest thing and pretends it was easy. It steals from the man the very thing that made his action remarkable. That's dishonor dressed up as praise. Now let me tell you about the abandonment. Veterans who carry visible fear, nightmares, flinching, the constant watchfulness that never quite turns off, they get measured against the myth. And the myth says, brave men don't feel fear. So what does that make the man who still feels it, who can't make it stop, who wakes up sweating, heart pounding, reaching for a weapon that isn't there? The myth says he must not have been brave. The myth says he's broken, weak, less than. So the veteran faces an impossible choice. He can admit his fear, the fear he felt then, the fear he carries now, and be seen as something less than the hero everyone wants him to be. Or he can hide it. Pretend the myth is true. accept the celebration of a fiction and carry the truth alone. Either way, he's abandoned. Either way, the gap between what he actually experienced and what people want to believe remains unbridged. The civilians don't want to hear it, and so he doesn't tell them. That's how the myth turns real sacrifice into stigma. That's how it transforms courage into isolation. And here's the thing that's hardest to admit. Civilians are complicit. We all are. Nobody wants to hear that the decorated hero was just as scared as they would be in his position. It's more comfortable to believe he's made of different stuff, that somewhere there exist men who simply don't feel what ordinary people feel when death is close. That belief lets you off the hook. If heroes are born that way, then courage can't be demanded of you. The hero did what he did because of what he is. You couldn't do it because you're not him. But that's a comfortable lie. The truth is that the man who received the medal felt exactly what you would feel. The terror, the sick dread, the desperate desire to be anywhere else. He felt all of it, and he did his duty anyway. That truth is harder to carry. It means courage isn't a gift, it's a choice. And choices can be asked of anyone. So civilians maintain the myth because it's comfortable. They clap for the fearless hero because believing in him is easier than understanding the scared man who actually did the job. They're complicit in the abandonment of the very men they claim to honor. Nobody means to do harm. That's not how it works. People genuinely believe they're showing respect when they say, "You're so brave, I could never do that." But listen to what that actually says. You're not like me. You're different. You didn't feel what I would feel. That's not honor. That's erasure. It says, your courage only counts if you didn't struggle. It measures bravery by the absence of fear rather than its presence. And it abandons everyone who felt fear and fought anyway, which is everyone who ever fought. The myth has sharp edges. It looks like respect, but it cuts. So, what replaces it? If the fearless hero is fiction, if courage isn't the absence of fear, then what is it? What actually happens inside the men who fight? That's where we go next. The myth has been demolished. Now we build something true. Let me tell you what I've seen. Every soldier is afraid. Every single one. The ones who say otherwise are either liars or so far gone they can't feel anything at all. And those men, the ones who truly feel nothing, they're more dangerous to their own side than the enemy. Fear is the natural response to someone trying to kill you. It's your body telling you the truth. This is bad. This could end you. You should leave. Any man who doesn't feel that either doesn't understand what's happening or has stopped being human in some important way. That's the truth of it. No exceptions. No special breed of warrior who was born without the fear the rest of us carry. Fear is universal. It's the baseline. It's the air you breathe when you're in combat. Now here's what they don't tell you. The difference between a man who fights and a man who runs isn't the presence or absence of fear. It's what he does with it. Both men are terrified. Both feel the cold hand gripping their guts. Both want desperately to be anywhere else. The only difference is the choice that comes next. Let me show you what that looks like. A man crouches in a shell hole. Mortars are walking toward his position, each explosion closer than the last. The rhythm of death moving toward him with mathematical certainty. The ground shakes. Dirt and debris rain down. His body has gone rigid with fear. Locked joints, clenched jaw, a desperate grip on his rifle that's more like a drowning man holding a rope than a soldier ready to fight. Everything in him wants to run, to press himself into the earth, to make himself so small that death passes him by. He doesn't run, not because he isn't afraid. He's more afraid than he's ever been in his life. His hands shake so badly the rifle jitters against the dirt. His guts have turned to ice water. Every instinct screams at him to go, to move, to get out of there before the next shell finds him. He doesn't run because 12 yards to his left his squad is moving. They're crossing open ground. They need covering fire. So he lifts his rifle. His hands shake. His whole body shakes. He can barely see through the sweat and the tears and the dirt in his eyes. And he shoots, shaking hands and all. That's bravery. Not the absence of the shaking. The refusal to let it stop him. You want to know what fear feels like? Real fear? Let me walk you through it. It's not just in your head. That's what civilians don't understand. Fear is physical. It lives in your body like a second heartbeat. and you can't think your way out of it. Your hands shake, not a little. They tremble so hard you can barely work the bolt on your rifle. Your joints lock up, muscles so tense they feel like they'll snap. Your jaw clenches until your teeth ache. Your guts turn to water. That's not a metaphor, that's literally what happens. Some men soil themselves. Most men are terrified they will. The shame of that possibility is another layer of fear on top of the fear of dying. You can't breathe right. Everything comes in short gasps. Your heart pounds so hard you can feel it in your ears, and sometimes you can hear it louder than the incoming rounds. You taste copper in your mouth, blood from where you've bitten your tongue or your cheek without noticing. And the mind goes strange. Time warps. Seconds stretch into hours. The world narrows down to what's immediately in front of you, and everything else just disappears. You might not remember your own name. You might forget what day it is, what country you're in, what you're supposed to be doing. Fear takes over everything. That's what every soldier feels, every single one, from the private in his first firefight to the decorated sergeant on his 50th. The fear is the same. The only thing that changes is what they've learned to do with it. See, here's the core truth that changes everything. Courage is a skill, not a trait. It's not something you're born with. It's not handed out at birth to special people who get to be brave while the rest of us just have to watch. Courage is something you do, not something you are. And like any skill, it can be learned. The trembling replacement on his first day has the same capacity for courage as the most decorated veteran. He just hasn't had to use it yet. He hasn't learned how to carry the fear without letting it carry him. But that learning is possible. That's what the veterans did. They didn't stop being afraid. They learned to function despite the fear. This is both better and worse than the myth. Better, because it means anyone can be brave. The scared kid who thinks he'll never measure up has the same raw material as the hero on the poster. He just needs the chance and the survival to develop it. Courage isn't reserved for the special few. It's available to everyone who decides to reach for it. Worse, because it means you can't escape the choice. You can't say, I'm just not a brave person, and leave it at that. The terrified man in the foxhole doesn't get to excuse himself. The fear is right there. It's not going anywhere, and the only question is what he does next. That's the way to real courage. It doesn't let you off the hook. Now think about what this means for how we understand soldiers. When you see war footage, real footage, not the movies, watch the bodies. Men stay low. They move in bursts. They flinch and duck and press themselves against whatever cover they can find. Their movements are jerky, reactive, nothing like the smooth grace of the movie hero. They're reacting to a world that's trying to kill them, and their bodies know it. When a veteran tells you, I was scared the whole time, believe him. He's not being modest. He's not fishing for reassurance. He's telling you the truth that the myth doesn't allow, that he felt everything you would feel in that situation, and he did his job anyway. That's harder than fearlessness. That's more impressive than not feeling anything. When someone translates brave for you, that's what it should mean. This man was terrified and did his duty anyway. Not the absence of fear, the presence of action despite it. So now you know what actually happens. Fear is universal, constant, overwhelming, and men act despite it. The shaking man in the foxhole isn't failing to be brave. He's demonstrating exactly what bravery requires. But understanding this raises a deeper question. If everyone is terrified, if fear is the air they breathe, then how do men keep fighting? What's the mechanism that lets a terrified body move forward instead of running? That's where we go next. Here's the thing about courage that nobody explains. It's not a single moment. It's not the dramatic choice they show in the movies, the hero deciding in a flash to charge forward while music swells and bullets fly. That moment exists, sure, but it's not where courage comes from. Courage comes from the 1,000 small decisions you make before that moment arrives. Every time you didn't run when you wanted to. Every time you stayed in the foxhole when every nerve screamed at you to leave. Every time you made yourself do one more thing, check your rifle, eat your rations, keep your head down, when all you wanted was to stop, to quit, to be anywhere else. That's where bravery gets built, and the invisible choices nobody sees. Let me show you how it works. A man's first firefight is chaos, pure chaos. His body refuses to respond the way he wants it to. His hands won't grip right. His legs won't move when he tells them to. The training he got, all those hours of drill, all those instructions, it evaporates like fog in sunlight. Fear takes over everything, and he might freeze up, or run, or just shake helplessly while the world explodes around him. That's normal. That's what happens to almost everyone. Now watch the same man in his 5th firefight. The fear is still there, just as strong, just as overwhelming. His hands still shake, his guts still clench. But now the rifle fires when he needs it to fire. His body moves when it needs to move. Not well, not gracefully, but it moves. By his 20th firefight, something has shifted. The fear is the same, it never gets less, but the functioning has become automatic. He doesn't have to fight through the paralysis anymore. His body has learned that fear doesn't have to be its master. The shaking hands still shake, but they do their job while they shake. What happened? What changed? Not the fear. The fear stays exactly the same. What changed is the 1,000 small decisions between that first firefight and the 20th. Every time he kept his rifle clean when he didn't want to touch it. Every time he ate food he could barely taste because he knew his body needed fuel. Every time he stayed in position when his legs ached to run, each of those choices taught his body something. Each one was a vote against fear's authority. Stay, function, move through it. 100 small votes, 1,000 small votes, until the body learned a new way of operating. That's how courage gets built. Not in a flash, in increments. Think about something you do automatically now that once required conscious effort. Driving, maybe. The first time you sat behind a wheel, you had to think about every single action. Hands here, foot there, check this mirror, signal that turn. It was overwhelming. You made mistakes. You felt out of control. Now you do it without thinking. Your hands go where they need to go. Your foot knows when to brake. You can hold a conversation while navigating traffic because the basic skills have become automatic. That's what happens with functioning through fear. The soldier practices, not deliberately, not in a training program, but through the forced repetition of combat. Each small decision to function despite terror is a rep. Do enough reps, and the skill becomes automatic. The fear remains. The paralysis doesn't. This is why replacements freeze and veterans don't. It's not that veterans feel less fear, they feel exactly the same amount. It's that veterans have made the 1,000 small decisions. Their bodies have learned. The new man hasn't had time to learn yet. Given survival and enough firefights, he'll learn the same thing. There's a threshold effect that matters here. At some point, nobody can tell you exactly when fear stops asking permission. The body has been trained by 100 small decisions to keep functioning regardless. The fear is still there, as present and powerful as ever, but it no longer controls the response. It becomes something you carry rather than something that carries you. That's what people are seeing when they think a veteran is calm under pressure. They're not seeing a man without fear. They're seeing a man whose body has learned, through countless small choices, to operate despite it. The calm is a product of practice, not a trait of character. But here's what they don't tell you, and this is important. Real courage training doesn't happen in the dramatic moments. It happens in the moments between. It's the nights you don't break down when you want to. It's the meals you force yourself to eat when you can barely swallow. It's the weapons you maintain, the positions you hold, the tears you don't let the new men see. A man checking his rifle for the 100th time, not because it needs checking, but because it's something he can control when everything else is uncontrollable. That's one of the 1,000 decisions. It seems small, it seems meaningless, but it's building something. It's teaching his body that function is still possible when everything screams that it isn't. Not crying in front of the replacements, that's another one. They need to believe they'll be okay. If they see you break down, they'll lose what little confidence they have. So you hold it together, not because you feel like holding it together, but because someone needs you to. That choice costs something, and it builds something. Eating food you can barely taste because your body needs fuel, and that's another decision. Your stomach rebels. Your throat doesn't want to swallow. But you eat anyway, because tomorrow you might need to run, or fight, or carry a wounded man back to safety. You eat for future need, not present appetite. That's courage in small form. These invisible choices construct the ability to act when the big moment comes. The dramatic charge, the split-second decision, those are built on foundations laid in moments nobody remembers. The mundane creates the heroic. So when you see a man do something remarkable under fire, the charge, the rescue, the stand against impossible odds, know that you're seeing the visible peak of an invisible mountain. Below that peak are 1,000 small decisions, each one a stone in the foundation. Without those stones, the peak doesn't exist. That's how courage actually works. Not as a gift given to special people, not as a single dramatic choice, but as a skill built through repetition in moments that seem insignificant by men who didn't realize they were building anything at all. The mechanism is clear now. Courage is cumulative. It's constructed through small choices, maintained through ongoing practice, expressed in the body as automatic function despite present fear. But one question remains. What drives those choices? What makes a terrified man stay when running would be easier? The mechanism of courage has been revealed. Now we look at its fuel. Let me tell you something about why soldiers fight. It's not what you think. Men don't fight for flags. They don't fight for countries or ideologies or the speeches generals give before battles. Those things matter somewhere, back home, in the newspapers, in the history books they'll write later. But they don't matter in the foxhole. They don't matter when shells are falling and the man next to you is hit and everything in you screams to run. What keeps a terrified man in the fight is simpler than that, and stronger. It's the men beside him. That's all. That's everything. Loyalty to your comrades, when you come right down to it. That has more to do with bravery in battle than even patriotism does. You can want to be brave. You can believe in the cause. But your spirit can desert you when things really get rough. Fear can overwhelm all the reasons you thought you had for being there. What it can't overwhelm, not as easily, is the bond to the men on your left and the men on your right. You find you can't let them down. And in the pinch, they can't let you down either. That mutual dependence is stronger than any individual fear. It's the only thing that is. Let me show you how this works. A platoon is pinned down in an orchard. Machine gun fire cuts through the branches every time anyone moves. A constant ripping sound. Leaves and wood chips flying. The snap of rounds passing inches overhead. Nobody can advance, nobody can retreat. They're just stuck there, pressed against the dirt, waiting for something to change. The lieutenant calls for a runner. Someone has to get word to the company commander, let them know the situation, maybe bring up mortars or call in artillery. It's the only way out of this. Every man in that platoon knows what running through that fire means. It's almost certainly death. The machine gun has the whole avenue covered. Anyone who stands up is going to get cut down before they make it 10 yards. The corporal stands up. His face is white, not pale, white, like something that's never seen sun. His hands tremble so badly he can barely take the message from the lieutenant. His legs don't want to hold him. Everything in him is screaming to get back down, to stay low, to let someone else do it. He doesn't run for his country. He doesn't run for democracy or freedom or any of the words they put on posters. Those words have become meaningless. They evaporated the moment the first rounds came in. He runs because his squad is pinned down, because the men around him, the men he's eaten with, slept beside, shared fear with for weeks or months, they need someone to go. And nobody else is standing up. He runs for them. That's all. That's everything. Whether he makes it or not, that's courage. Not the absence of fear. You could see the fear in every shaking step, but the presence of something stronger. Loyalty to the men who were counting on him. This is what civilians don't understand, and it's why their questions often miss the point. People ask, how could you do that? Weren't you scared? As if fear and action are opposites. As if courage means not feeling what any sane person would feel. The answer is always the same, even when veterans don't know how to say it. I was terrified, but they needed me. That's not a complicated equation. It's not grand or noble or wrapped in flags. It's just human beings refusing to abandon each other. That's what actually drives combat. That's what actually keeps men fighting. Here's the thing about patriotism. It cracks under fire. You can believe in your country. You can believe the cause is just. You can have every good reason to be there, fighting this fight in this place. But when the mortars start falling, when men start screaming, when you see what high-velocity metal does to human flesh, those beliefs get very small, very fast. The flag is far away. It's an abstraction. You can't touch it. You can't feel its weight. It doesn't look back at you with eyes full of trust. The man beside you is 12 inches away. He's real. He's terrified, same as you. He's counting on you the same way you're counting on him. He'll remember if you run, and you'll have to live with that, if you live at all. Under fire, abstraction collapses. Only the immediate remains real. The grand causes evaporate. What stays is smaller and stronger. Don't let your friends die. Don't be the one who ran. Don't abandon the man who wouldn't abandon you. That's why good units aren't trained to be fearless. That's not possible. You can't train fear out of human beings. Good units are trained to depend on each other. The connection is what makes functioning through fear possible. It gives men something to hold on to when everything else falls away. You don't stay because you're not scared. You stay because leaving would betray the man beside you. Your courage becomes his survival. His courage becomes yours. The loop holds because neither of you can bear to be the one who breaks it. When veterans struggle to explain why they did what they did, this is why. The answer sounds too simple. They were killing my friends. That doesn't fit the grand narrative. It doesn't match what civilians expect to hear. But it's the truth. It's been the truth in every war ever fought. Men don't fight for abstractions. They fight for each other. Listen to what veterans actually say when they talk about combat. It's rarely their individual actions. It's always the unit, the squad, the platoon, the men. They'll deflect praise toward others. They'll say we instead of I. They'll talk about what they owed to the men around them, what they couldn't let happen to their friends. That's not modesty. That's accuracy. They're telling you what actually mattered. Not the flag, not the cause, not the grand arc of history. The men beside them. That's what they fought for. That's what kept them moving when everything screamed at them to stop. And here's the dark side of this truth, the part that makes it heavier to carry. The same bond that gave them courage to function gives them pain when the bonds are broken. When the man beside you, the man you would have died for, the man you functioned through terror for, when that man gets killed, something breaks in you that doesn't heal right. You survive. He doesn't. And you have to carry that. The loyalty that made courage possible becomes the grief that doesn't end. The same mechanism, different currency. The men who fought for each other are the men who mourn for each other. The bond doesn't break just because one of them dies. This is part of the weight soldiers carry. Not just the fear they learned to live with. The loss of the men who made the fear bearable. So now you see it. The mechanism of courage, the 1,000 small decisions, the body learning to function through fear, and the fuel that drives it. Loyalty to the men beside you, the bond that's stronger than any individual terror. These truths connect. The small decisions get made because abandoning the men beside you is impossible. The fear gets carried because putting it down would mean letting your friends down. The system holds together. But understanding this creates a new obligation. If this is what courage really is, not fearlessness, but fear plus loyalty plus choice, then how do we see the men who carried it? How do they see each other? And what do we owe them now that we understand what they actually did? That's where we go next. Here's something nobody tells you about veterans. They recognize each other, not by the uniform. There's nothing to see when the uniform comes off, not by the haircut or the posture, though those can be giveaways. Veterans recognize each other by something deeper, something civilians can't see because they don't know what to look for. Watch a veteran enter a room. Watch where his eyes go. They scan the space, not casually, not the way you'd look around a restaurant deciding where to sit. They sweep exits first, then the people. Then the shadows, the corners, the places where threats could hide. It takes about 2 seconds. Most civilians don't notice it happening. Another veteran notices. He recognizes that sweep because he does it too. He sees the slight tension that never quite releases, the positioning near exits, the way the hands stay visible and ready without appearing ready. He knows what it means. They don't need to compare medals. They don't need to swap stories or check service dates. When their eyes meet, there's a recognition that bypasses all of that. They know the same thing. They carry the same weight. The decorated hero shaking before his 50th action, and the replacement trembling before his first. They're having the same experience. The only difference is that one has learned to carry it. One has made the 1,000 small decisions. One has the body that functions through terror because it's been trained by repetition. But the fear is identical. This understanding demolishes something. It demolishes the separation we imagine between heroes and ordinary men, between the men who did extraordinary things and the men who just served, just got through it, just survived. There is no separation. There never was. Every soldier who ever fought across wars, across generations, across nations, faced the same fear. The uniforms change. The weapons change. The enemies change. The terrain changes. The tactics change. But the fear is identical. Think about what that means. A man at Gettysburg crouching behind a stone wall while artillery screams overhead. A man at the Somme pressing himself into mud while machine gun fire rips the air above his head. A man in the Ardennes huddled in a frozen foxhole while German shells walk toward his position. A man in Vietnam, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. The details change, but the essential experience stays the same. Fear. The certainty that death is close. The screaming need to run, to hide, to be anywhere else. And then the choice. The 1,000 small choices that build into the one visible choice. To function anyway. Different wars. Different enemies. Same courage. Same weight. This is why veterans from different eras connect instantly. It's not military culture. It's not shared politics or opinions about the wars they fought. It's something more fundamental than any of that. They've done the same impossible thing. They've learned to carry fear without letting it carry them. They've functioned through terror day after day until they survived. They've made the choices nobody saw, the small ones that built into the big ones, the votes against fear that accumulated until action was possible. And they carry the same weight home. A World War II veteran, 80, 90 years old now, if he's still alive, and a young man back from the Middle East have nothing obvious in common. Different generations, different technology, different enemies, different world. But put them in a conversation about what it felt like, the fear, the functioning, what kept them going, and they understand each other instantly. The conversation is fluent, no translation needed. Because the core experience doesn't change. This is what the myth destroys. The fearless hero creates hierarchy. It says, some men are special, most aren't. Some men have that quality, whatever it is, that makes them capable of courage. The rest of us are just ordinary. We couldn't do what they did because we're not them. The truth creates solidarity. It says every man who ever served knows the same weight. The decorated general and the private nobody remembers, they felt the same fear. They made the same kind of choices. They carry the same burden home. The myth separates the hero from humanity. The truth returns him to it. And this matters for how we understand soldiers. All soldiers, not just the famous ones, the decorated ones, the ones whose stories get told. Every man who went into combat and did his job did something remarkable, because doing your job when you're terrified is remarkable. It's one of the hardest things a human being can do. The unknown private who never received a medal, who just kept his rifle working and stayed in position and didn't run. He did the same essential thing as the man with the Medal of Honor. He made the choices. He carried the fear. He functioned. Understanding this changes how you see them all. When veterans find each other, when they form communities, join organizations, gather at memorials, they're not doing it for nostalgia. They're not clinging to the past or glorifying what they went through. They're finding spaces where the weight is understood without needing to be explained. Everywhere else, they're surrounded by people who don't know, people who believe the myth, people who want to call them fearless heroes or, worse, who want them to be fearless heroes, unchanged by what they saw, unaffected by what they did. With other veterans, they don't have to pretend. They don't have to explain that the fear was real, that the cost was real, that the weight they carry is still heavy. Everyone there already knows. That's what these communities provide. Not glorification of war, recognition of truth, a place where the scared men who did it anyway can be seen for what they actually are. So the separation collapses. The separation between hero and ordinary man, fiction. The separation between one war and another, fiction. What remains when you strip all that away is a single truth expressed in countless contexts. Courage is functioning through fear. Everyone who has done it knows what it cost. And they recognize each other. But understanding this creates an obligation. If every soldier is the same soldier, if they all faced the same fear and made the same choices and carry the same weight, then what do we owe them? How should that understanding change how we treat veterans, how we remember the dead, how we tell stories about war? Now we come to the hard part. Understanding something obligates you. You can't unknow what you know. You can't go back to comfortable ignorance once the truth has been shown to you. And the truth about courage, what it actually is, what it actually costs, demands something from everyone who understands it. When we believe the myth, when we accept the fiction of the fearless hero, we're given permission to expect certain things from soldiers. We expect them to go to war and do their duty. We expect them to face danger without flinching. And we expect them to come home unchanged. After all, if brave men don't feel fear, why would they carry it with them? If courage means the absence of terror, then the war should end when the shooting stops. The hero should be able to hang up his uniform and return to normal life, no different than he was before. We give him a parade, we shake his hand, we thank him for his service, and we think the account is settled. The truth demands more. The truth says those men were terrified. They functioned through that terror. They carried fear the way you carry a loaded pack, heavy, exhausting, always present. And the mechanism that let them do it, the 1,000 small decisions, the body learning to operate despite panic, that mechanism doesn't switch off. They carry it home. They carry it forever. Knowing this changes what we owe. We owe them recognition that courage has a cost. Not a cost paid once and finished, but an ongoing cost. Nightmares and vigilance and the fear that learned to stay. We owe them acknowledgement that the war they carry inside is real, even if we can't see it. We owe them the understanding that their ongoing struggle isn't weakness. It's the receipt for their service. A handshake between a civilian and a veteran can mean different things. If you believe the myth, the handshake celebrates fearlessness. You're touching the hand of a man who stared down death without trembling. A hero. Someone made of different stuff than you. If you understand the truth, the handshake means something else entirely. You're touching the hand of a man who felt everything you would feel, the terror, the sick dread, the desperate need to run, and moved forward anyway. A man whose hands shook when he loaded his rifle. A man who was scared every single day and did his duty every single day. A man who learned to carry a weight you've never felt and is carrying it still. That understanding is what proper recognition looks like. Not thank you for your fearlessness, because that celebrates a fiction. But thank you for going forward when everything in you wanted to run. That's recognizing what actually happened. That's honoring the real man instead of the myth. Here's the thing about thank you for your service. It's become automatic. People say it without thinking, the way you say how are you without really asking. It costs nothing to say. It requires no understanding. It can be offered to the fearless hero of imagination just as easily as to the scared man who actually did the job. Veterans sense this. That's why many of them feel uncomfortable when they hear it. The phrase is empty. It bridges nothing. It acknowledges nothing specific. It's a ritual that lets civilians feel good without doing the work of understanding what they're actually thanking someone for. Genuine recognition is harder than that. Genuine recognition means understanding what courage actually required. Not the absence of fear, but its presence. It means seeing the weight the veteran still carries and not expecting him to pretend it isn't there. It means finding words that honor truth rather than myth. That's a skill. It takes effort. It requires setting aside the comfortable fiction and meeting the actual person. This extends to how we remember the dead, too. When we honor fallen soldiers, we owe them truth. Not they died fearlessly, because that erases what they actually did. But they died having faced their fear every day, having chosen duty over comfort, having carried weight civilians never see. The dead don't need our myths. They don't benefit from being remembered as something they weren't. What honors them is truth, recognition that they were human beings who did extraordinary things while feeling everything human beings feel when death is close. Every time we repeat the myth, every time we describe the fallen as fearless, as heroes made of different stuff, we diminish what they actually accomplished. We pretend their courage was easy. It wasn't. Nothing about it was easy. Proper honor means acknowledging the difficulty. It means saying, this person was scared and mortal and wanted to live, and they did their duty anyway. That's the truth that deserves remembrance. And there's the matter of veterans who struggle. When a veteran comes home and can't sleep, when he flinches at loud noises, when he can't relax in crowds, can't stop scanning for threats, can't shake the vigilance that kept him alive, when he has nightmares, or panic attacks, or moments where the past crashes into the present without warning, the myth says something is wrong with him. If brave men don't feel fear and he's still afraid, then maybe he wasn't brave, maybe he's broken, maybe he's weak. The truth says he's carrying the receipt for his courage. The same mechanism that let him function through terror is still running. The body and mind that adapted to combat haven't unadapted just because the war ended. The vigilance that saved his life is still vigilant. The fear that he learned to carry is still being carried. His struggle isn't evidence that he failed. It's evidence that he succeeded at one of the hardest things human beings ever do. And he's paying for that success with ongoing cost. Understanding this changes how we treat him. We don't measure him against the fearless hero and find him lacking. We don't expect him to just get over it. We don't treat his continuing battle as weakness. We recognize it for what it is, the long price of the 1,000 small decisions, the weight that stays heavy, the cost that keeps being paid, and we stand with him instead of abandoning him to the gap between myth and reality. This is what understanding demands. Not pity. Veterans don't want pity. Not worship. They don't want that either. Just recognition. Just truth. Just being seen for what they actually are. Scared men who did their jobs anyway and who carry the weight of that doing. That's what we owe. Anything less is complicity in the lie. Here's what nobody tells you about coming home from war. The mechanism that saved your life doesn't switch off. You spent months, years maybe, training your body and mind to function through terror. Every day, fear. Every day, action despite the fear. You learn to carry it. You learn to operate with a cold hand gripping your guts, with your heart pounding and your hands shaking, with every instinct screaming at you to run. That learning saved you. That's how you survived. But now the war is over, and you're home, and that mechanism keeps running. The fear has nowhere to go. It's still there, coiled in your chest, waiting for triggers. And the triggers are everywhere. A car backfires. Your body reacts before your mind can think. The flinch, the crouch, the surge of adrenaline that comes from months of associating sudden loud noises with incoming fire. Your heart hammers. Your hands shake. You're back in it. Just for a second, before you remember where you are. A shout in the night, the smell of smoke, a helicopter overhead, the wrong sound at the wrong moment, anything that your body learned to associate with danger. The triggers don't make logical sense. They don't have to. Your body learned them under conditions where logic was a luxury you couldn't afford. This isn't weakness. This isn't failure. This isn't something broken in you that needs to be fixed. This is the receipt for your courage. The same adaptation that kept you alive in combat follows you home. The vigilance that made you effective under fire doesn't know the war is over. The body that learned to carry fear while functioning hasn't learned how to put that fear down. Let me show you what this looks like. A man sleeps alone in a converted garage, lights on, pistol under his pillow. He can't sleep in the house with his family. The bedroom is too far from the exits. The darkness is too complete. His body won't let him rest in conditions it associates with vulnerability. He's not broken. The mechanism that saved his life is still trying to save his life. He just doesn't know there's nothing to save him from anymore. Another man sits at a family dinner, birthday party, Thanksgiving, Christmas, some occasion where everyone is happy and relaxed. Everyone except him. He's positioned where he can see the door. His eyes keep sweeping the room. He knows where the exits are. He's cataloged the potential threats without meaning to. He can't stop. He's tried. The vigilance isn't a choice anymore. It's automatic, the same way it became automatic in combat. 100 small decisions to stay alert, to scan, to position himself for escape or defense. They've become unconscious habit. He can no more stop scanning than he can stop breathing. Another man flinches at fireworks 30 years after his war. 3 decades of peace, of safety, of knowing intellectually that there's no danger, and his body still reacts to the sound of explosions as if rounds are incoming. The learning is permanent. It doesn't fade with time. It doesn't respond to reason. These aren't symptoms of failure. These are the costs of success. These men succeeded at the impossible task of functioning through terror, day after day, until they survived. They made the 1,000 small decisions. They trained their bodies to carry fear without letting it carry them. They did what was required, and they lived, and they're still paying for that success. Here's the thing about getting over it that civilians don't understand. You don't get over having rewired yourself to function through terror. That's not how it works. You can learn to manage the rewiring. You can develop new patterns, new coping mechanisms, new ways of functioning in a world that isn't trying to kill you. You can, with time and help and effort, build a life around the weight you carry. But you don't put the weight down. You can't. The body that learned to carry fear in combat learned it too well to unlearn. Does that sound familiar? It should, because the skill veterans need after the war is the same skill they developed during it, functioning despite ongoing fear, carrying the weight and moving forward anyway, living with something that never goes away. The difference is that in combat, the adaptation made sense. Fear kept you alive because there was something to fear. The vigilance served a purpose. A constant readiness had a target. At home, the mechanism runs without purpose. The fear is still real, real in the body, real in the nervous system, real in the midnight panic, but there's nothing to direct it at, no enemy to watch for, no threat to prepare for. The system keeps running, but there's nowhere for it to go. That's the particular cruelty of it. The courage that saved them becomes the burden that weighs them down. The adaptation that was necessary becomes the condition they have to manage for the rest of their lives. And here's what makes it worse. The myth tells them they shouldn't be struggling at all. If brave men don't feel fear, if courage means the absence of terror, then what does it mean when the terror won't stop? When the nightmares keep coming? When the vigilance won't release? The myth says, you must not have been brave. You must be weak. Something is wrong with you that wasn't wrong with the real heroes. That's the betrayal. The myth doesn't just misunderstand courage. It abandons the courageous when they need understanding most. It adds shame to the burden. It isolates men in their struggle by telling them they're the only ones who struggle. But they're not the only ones. They're not broken or weak or less than the heroes we imagine. They're the actual heroes. They're the scared men who did their jobs anyway. And the fear that follows them home is the proof of what they did, the evidence that they face terror every day and function through it. The nightmares aren't weakness. They're the cost of strength. The vigilance isn't paranoia. It's the adaptation that saved their lives, still adapting. The flinch at loud noises isn't failure. It's the body remembering what it learned to survive. Understanding this is what we owe them, not pity. They don't need pity. Recognition. The recognition that what they carry is real, that it came from real courage, and that carrying it is its own form of ongoing bravery. The war doesn't end when the shooting stops, not for them. It just changes form. Let me take you back to where we started. France, 1944. A frozen foxhole before dawn. A man huddles in the dark, shaking, not from the cold, though God knows it's cold enough to crack your bones. He's shaking because in 20 minutes he's going up and over that rim, and German machine guns are waiting, and he knows that some of the men beside him won't see noon. Maybe he won't either. His teeth chatter so hard he bites his tongue. His hands won't hold still enough to check his rifle. His guts have turned to water. Remember how you saw that man at the beginning, before you understood what courage actually is? The myth would have called him a coward. Or, at least, the myth would have suggested that his shaking meant something was wrong, that real heroes don't tremble, that the fear he's feeling is a weakness the true warriors don't share. Now you know better. That man isn't failing to be brave. He's about to demonstrate exactly what bravery is. In a few minutes he'll go over that rim. His hands will still shake. His guts will still be water. The fear won't leave him. It never leaves. Is there when he moves up, there when he finds cover, there when he raises his rifle, there when he fires. And he'll do it anyway, because the men beside him need him to, because he's made 1,000 small decisions that have built into this one. Because his body has learned, or is learning, that fear doesn't have to be his master. That man is not a coward. That man is every soldier who ever lived. That man is courage itself. Here's what we owe him. We owe him the truth about what he did, not the comfortable lie that he was fearless, because that diminishes his achievement. A man who feels nothing and charges forward has done less than a man who feels everything and charges forward anyway. The myth steals from him the very thing that makes his action remarkable. We owe him the truth that he was exactly like us, scared and human and mortal. He felt what we would feel, the terror, the certainty of death, the overwhelming desire to be anywhere else. He wasn't made of different stuff. He wasn't specially born for courage. He was a human being facing his death and choosing to function anyway. That truth is harder than the myth. It doesn't let us put him on a pedestal and leave him there. It doesn't let us separate him from ourselves with comfortable distance. It forces us to recognize that he did something we might be asked to do, and that he did it while feeling everything we would feel. We owe him recognition of what it cost. Not the immediate cost, the wounds, the deaths, the visible sacrifice. The ongoing cost, the fear that followed him home, the vigilance that never switches off, the nightmares, the flinching, the weight that stays heavy years and decades after the shooting stopped. His courage wasn't free. The bill didn't come due once and then stop. It keeps coming. And understanding that is part of what we owe him. We owe him the end of the myth. Every time we tell the story of the fearless hero, we betray the actual men who served. Every time we celebrate the fiction instead of the reality, we abandon them to the gap between what they actually experienced and what we want to believe. Every time we call them fearless, we erase the very thing that made what they did courageous. The myth is comfortable. The myth lets us off the hook. The myth lets us believe that heroes are a separate species, that courage is a gift we weren't given, that what they did has nothing to do with us. The truth is harder. The truth says, they were just like you. They did extraordinary things while feeling exactly what you would feel. And the capacity they demonstrated, the ability to function through terror, exists in you too. That's uncomfortable. That's demanding. That means courage isn't something we can admire from a safe distance. It's something that might be asked of us. But it's the truth. And the truth is what soldiers deserve. Here's what bravery actually is. I've shown you now. I've torn down the myth and built up the reality in its place. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It never was. The fearless hero is a story we tell ourselves because the truth is harder, because the truth asks something of us that the myth doesn't. Bravery is being so scared you can't think straight and doing what needs doing anyway. Bravery is your hand shaking so bad you can barely load your rifle, and loading it anyway. Bravery is wanting to run so desperately that your legs ache with it, and staying put because the man next to you is counting on you. Bravery is 1,000 small decisions that no one sees. The nights you don't break down, the meals you force yourself to eat, the rifle you keep clean because someone might need you, the tears you don't let the new men see. Bravery is the bond that's stronger than fear. the loyalty to the men beside you that keeps you moving when nothing else can. Not patriotism, not ideology, not the speeches generals give. The men, that's what holds. And bravery is the weight that doesn't get lighter, the fear that follows you home, the vigilance that won't release, the cost that keeps being paid years and decades after the war ended. Every soldier who ever went into battle was afraid. Every single one. The ones who came home afraid of admitting it carried a double burden. The ones who told the truth about their fear were sometimes looked at differently, as if their honesty made their courage less real. But fear was always there, in the freezing foxhole, in the moment before the assault, in the long nights when sleep wouldn't come because tomorrow might be the end. What those men did, what they actually did, stripped of mythology and movie magic, was learn to function while terrified. They shook and they moved forward. They wanted to run and they stayed. They felt the cold hand of fear gripping their guts, and they did their duty anyway because someone had to, and they were there. That's more impressive than fearlessness, not less. A man who doesn't feel fear and charges a machine gun is just a broken instrument. A man who feels everything, the terror, the uncertainty, the overwhelming desire to be anywhere else, and charges anyway, has done something genuinely remarkable. He's made a choice that the fearless man never had to make. We owe these men the truth about their courage. When you shake a veteran's hand, know what you're touching. The hand of a man who learned to carry fear without letting it carry him. The hand that shook when it held the rifle. The hand that wanted desperately to be anywhere else and stayed anyway. When you see the medals on a uniform, know what they represent. Not the absence of terror, but the presence of duty in spite of it. Every decoration was earned by a man who was afraid. Every one. When you meet a veteran who seems calm, who carries himself with quiet steadiness, know what you're seeing. Not a man without fear, but a man who made the 1,000 small decisions. A man whose body learned to function through terror. A man who is still carrying weight you can't see. And when you encounter the stories we tell about war, the movies, the books, the histories, look for the truth beneath the myth. Ask yourself, does this honor the scared men who did their jobs anyway, or does it replace them with comfortable fiction? The fearless hero was always a lie. The shaking man who moved forward anyway was always the truth. Now you know the difference. Now you can honor them properly. The real heroes are scared men who didn't let it stop them. That's all bravery ever was.